And we're live. So, joining me on the call today, we have Marty Fincher from EmploySure. Welcome to the call, Marty.
Thanks, David.
Look, today, the interesting topic, we talk about employment and we talk about building teams. And, it's not only the greatest opportunity for business, but I think it's also the greatest challenge for a lot of people in business. Tell me a bit about, what EmploySure is all about and what they're seeing in the marketplace right now.
Okay. Well, EmploySure, we're Australia's largest workplace relations consultants. I guess, in essence, David, what we do is we protect about 31,000 small to medium-sized businesses across ANZ with their Fair Work and WorkSafe compliance. I guess generally you'll find the larger businesses have got their own HR department or employment lawyers or workplace health and safety officers, etc. But a lot of smaller businesses don't have those luxuries in place. So I guess we outsource that at the fraction of the cost of employing someone to do it. So that's where we fit into the marketplace. We provide an outsourced support in relation to employment relations and workplace health and safety.
Right. So when we look at the market right now, because obviously the economy is sort of going through a bit of a squeeze right now, and it's interesting because there's also talk about the 4-day work week and all sorts of different things which really challenge the business owner. What do you see in the marketplace right now in terms of small business and how they're dealing with this employment issue?
Sure. Well, there's obviously since COVID, there's been marked changes in relation to that. Employees have got expectations around flexible working arrangements, as you said, working 4 days a week, and it's difficult for employers to navigate their way through that because these challenges haven't come up in the past. It's historically been, you come to work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and this is what's required. But now employees are becoming, I guess, more savvy, more aware of their rights and entitlements, and they can be opportunistic and they can be litigious in certain cases as well. So employers have never probably had to navigate their way through so many challenges, but there's certainly things that are coming through. And at the end of the day, the business owners are out there. They've got commitments, and it's a commercial arrangement. They've got to be able to run that business in a cost-effective manner, and it can't always be one-way traffic. So that's, I guess, what we help them navigate. So they've got processes in place, and if they can't facilitate those demands of their employees, how do you navigate your way through it? Because it needs to be a two-way street. It can't always be in favour of the employee, and that's resonates with me when I speak to, I've got about 900 clients I look after nationally. Common feedback I get, David, from employers is they often feel helpless. They feel like employees seem to hold a lot of the aces when it comes to negotiation or challenges. So that's what we assist with.
So in terms of the current situation, because obviously with inflation and the interest rates going up, a lot of employees are now looking for pay rises. How do you suggest a business owner deals with this?
Well, that's on a case-by-case basis. If, I read a thing on LinkedIn only on Friday, I think it was, an employer said to the HR manager, such and such wants a pay increase. What should I do? The HR manager's response was, well, if it's reasonable, you should try and accommodate it, because it's going to cost you a lot more to re-engage, rehire, retrain than potentially what that might be. But it's on a case-by-case basis. It needs to be commercially viable, but good employees are hard to find. So they need to be valued and treated accordingly. So, it's a difficult one. There's no one answer, no one definitive answer for that. But I'll say, the overriding theme I get from a lot of employers when I ring them and I check in with my clients every 3 to 6 months, how's everything going? Everything's going great from the EmploySure perspective. How do we get good staff? That's what they're finding hard to find. So if you have got good staff, my words would be try and hold on to them.
Right. So really, like, there's a couple of things in what you just said. One is, if someone's looking for more money, I'm a big believer that people get paid what they're worth. And what I mean by that is if they're looking for more money, they need to be valuable. Okay. And as you suggested, well, if they're good staff, you need to hang on to them, so you should be paying them more. And sometimes it's up to the employer to be aware of what the market's paying. So knowing
Yep.
that there's going to be increases in certain markets, you need to make sure that your team members are not enticed by that.
Mm.
And the other side of it is performance management. And I think
Yep.
like you sort of touched on this as well, but I feel a lot of people in business grapple with how do I know what productive looks like? How do I know if
Yep.
my team members are doing their job properly? Uh,
Mm.
what are your thoughts around managing performance?
Managing performance, it's a good question, and it's something that needs to become part of your process, so it doesn't come up and surprise you, like you just referred to there, David. And that is having systems in place where maybe once every six, or at least every 12 months, you do a performance appraisal, where you will be open and transparent. And try and identify the strengths and weaknesses of your employees and how you can improve, and have that approach of continuous improvement, where basically your staff are buying into the fact that, yeah, I am good at that, and you are recognising that. But these are areas that I can improve on. So then you're getting buy-in from your staff. So that's about linking that back to a very clear and concise job description that
Mhm.
states your expectations, maybe setting out goals and targets
Yeah.
for your staff. So at the end of the day, everyone's very clear on, and it's not a surprise if you're underperforming, or that's not a surprise that you've met those objectives of your employer, and maybe at that point you are empowered enough to be able to say to your boss, listen, I've exceeded those targets. I feel like I've hit these KPIs. Can we look at
Mm.
my options as far as being remunerated and acknowledged accordingly moving forward?
Because I think getting paid per hour is really something from the industrial age, isn't it? I mean, when we
Mm.
run a business, we're really looking for value. And, when we pay our employees, we expect to see an output or a result, right? But for
Yep.
some people, they find this really hard to measure.
Yep.
How do I know what productive looks like? How do I measure a result, especially for, I don't know, someone who's an admin person, as an example? You know,
Yeah, well, that's a good point. It's about putting key metrics in place. That's part of what our service is. When we set up an employment contract, letters of offer, job descriptions, we put in place clear and defined expectations around that role. But as you say, it varies because there's key metrics in place. If you're in sales, it might be a dollar figure, or it might be a client number that you need to achieve. Similarly, in admin, it can be targeted, but that's a slightly different approach. But I think what you mentioned before, David, it's really important to be transparent. So it's very clear that these are the expectations. You spoke about hourly rates, etc. Those days seem to be becoming a bit of a thing of the past, because generally a lot of employees work outside those hours, and that's an expectation, um,
mm.
albeit a risky one. It just needs to be, you can have your employees that work additional hours, but it just needs to be reflected in robust employment contract and policies and procedures and expectations. So I think
Mm.
it's just all about reflecting it in documentation, so there's no grey areas. Because often when we talk about employees being your greatest asset, but also can be your greatest challenge, um, is because employees, when the relationship sours, and let's be honest, periodically it's going to sour. You're not going to have employees forever. But when it sours, the employer's got things written in a certain way that they're not exposed. Because I've seen so many stories, I can tell you stories that make your hair curl about
Mhm.
employers that are generous and are very accommodating with their staff, and then the relationship sours, and the employee thinks that the employer has got some money tree growing in the backyard, and they're owed and entitled to this, and this. So,
Yeah, you're touching on a thing. It's known as entitlement mentality or entitlement
yeah,
mindset, and I
absolutely.
feel there is a bit of that going on. But I was interesting. I was at a seminar many years ago, and one of the guys that was talking said, most employees think that when you sell something for $1,000, you made $1,000,
Yeah,
and
spot on.
they don't take into account the cost of delivery or even their own wage, let alone
Yeah.
any other costs. Is that gap getting broader or narrowing in terms of employee understanding?
I think it would be getting broader. The biggest area for claims um, in the 31,000 clients that we look after, about 40% of them are in trade, blue collar type arrangements,
Mm.
often where we get a lot of issues from employers as with apprentices.
Yeah.
That Gen Y have got that sense of entitlement that you referred to, but
Mm.
it's not just there. We find it across the board, and you're so right. Employees don't appreciate, in a lot of cases, the fact that employers have got financial investments, they've got mortgages, this, that, and the other, and they just think that they're some cash cow. We know that that's not the case. There's a lot of hard work, and for every business that's successful, there's plenty of stories of other small businesses that aren't successful. So,
So,
um,
yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's
cool. You touched on documentation, which I think is critical, and then there's another element which is education, and I think part of the employer's responsibility is to educate that employee that comes in and goes, well, I'm working 40 hours, so pay me for 40 hours.
mm,
If we don't move them from thinking they're getting paid for their time to realizing they're getting paid for their production,
yep,
then that sort of loads the gun in a way, doesn't it, with this entitlement
it
situation?
certainly does. It certainly does, and basically, what we do in our contracts, we acknowledge the fact that in a lot of cases people are working additional hours. So in our documentation, we get to, delve down and find out what the needs are of the business, what the business owners are trying to achieve, what they're paying their staff, and if they're paying them over and above the award, you can put in what's called a loaded rate. A loaded rate protects the directors of the business.
Mm.
Um, in the event that a relationship sours, that people go back and say, "Oh, listen, I was working 40 hours a week. The award's only 38." Well, we'll do a loaded rate that calculates in that additional time that they're working, and make the employer's generosity be cushioned or protected. So I've seen situations like that where people have worked on a 48-hour week, because that's what it used to be. It's now 38 hours. Not having it covered in documentations had meant that there's back pays of time and a half on those extra 2 hours. You do that, say, on someone who's on, let's say they're on, let's say, $30 an hour. If you haven't reflected that correctly, those extra 2 hours become $45 an hour for hours 39 and 40. So it's an additional $30 a week, and if you find that 2 or 3 years down the track, you're looking at $5,000-6,000 in back pay. And I
Mm.
see these things happen all the time. So
So really, like,
it's
what I'm
about,
getting from you is the message is pretty clear. People are going to cross their T's and dot their I's when it comes to employment contracts. And just because you're a
yep,
small business doesn't insulate you from this potential litigation and issues. And what you just described is super interesting because really I can be generous, but if I'm not articulate in how I do that, I can still get burnt at the back end of all that, right?
yep. Yeah, and it's so common
Mm.
that you see that happen, and employers just need to make sure they're protected, because the three regulators are, from a government perspective. If you're a small business owner, you've got the ATO.
Yeah.
Most businesses got a bookkeeper, accountant that look after that. It's
Hmm.
the other two areas often where they'll have gaps, and that's Fair Work and WorkSafe. Um, Basically, they do not discriminate. They don't care if you've got 2 employees or you've got 2,000. You've still got exactly the same responsibility in providing a fair and safe workplace
Mm.
for those 2 employees or 2,000 employees. So, um, they will still dish out the same fines. They're not going to say, "Oh, listen, they're only small. We'll just give them a warning." No, they certainly can impact, and on a smaller business, it can be financially crippling.
Oh,
But
devastating. Yeah.
yeah,
I've heard a
for
couple of
sure.
cases, people get an unfair dismissal claim or even worse, a work cover claim, and they've only got
Yep.
one employee. and so there's no one else to do the work, and now they're paying out for the person who's not doing the work as well. So it's
Yep.
almost like there's a chasm between being self-employed, one-man band, and having a business that's got enough buoyancy in it to cover these twos and fros, right?
Yes, yeah, spot on. And you'll see, you'll see these small businesses that just don't get it right, and they're crippled. Like a fair work claim, they can be up to 26 weeks' pay if you don't follow that correctly.
Mm.
You know, we've had recently with work cover now the workplace manslaughter issues coming in place. So it's more and more heavily scrutinised. You have general protections claims where
Mm.
people are saying they're bullied or harassed,
Mm.
and they're also backed by an ever growing stream of no win no fee lawyers like your Slater and Gordon and Shine lawyers. Have
Mm-hmm.
you been unfairly treated at work? That's an industry that's existing pretty much to say they'll take your boss on and you don't have to pay.
Yeah.
If they fancy their chances of getting a payday out of the employer, they'll certainly they'll take you on. So that's another concern for employers.
So there's two questions I have. One is like, obviously, we're moving towards more litigation in the workplace, not less, which
Yep.
is heading towards what almost happens in the US, in America.
Mm.
Everything's litigious and you can get sued for just sending someone the wrong direction down the street. Do you feel that our economy is going to head down this path?
It's becoming more and more so, and I guess part of why our business is growing so rapidly, because part of what we do is, as well as providing that documentation and ongoing advice, so we provide 24/7 advice line, so an employer can ring up and say, "Oh, listen, I'm putting on a new employee on Monday, starting Monday week. They're in this role."
Mm.
We will draft all the documentation, letters of offer, job descriptions, performance appraisals, all the supporting documentation, but as an additional layer of coverage, what we provide is we provide legal representation for our partner law firm, Employ Shaw Law. If it does go to Fair Work or ends up in the court system, but we also have our own discretionary mutual, similar to, I guess, like insurance, that covers and protects the employer in the unlikely event. So we've got a vested interest in making sure that our clients' documentation is completely up to speed when awards change or pay rates change or someone leaves the business. We're all hands on deck, making sure that they're following the right process. Because if we're going to legally represent, cover, and protect our clients, we're not in the business of losing expensive litigation. We set it up properly to mitigate against those risks,
Yeah, I
because
understand.
we don't want to. Our model doesn't support getting beaten in the court system too often. So that's what we do there.
Fair enough. Another question, a bit outside of all of this, is there's an experiment going on with a work week, a 4-day work week.
Yep.
What's your thoughts
Yep.
on this as a way forward?
Well, it needs, at the end of the day, the employer has got, they've got to work. They've got to work out a system that works for their business. If a 4-day working week's not going to accommodate the needs of their clients and expectations, etc., well, they don't necessarily have to. They're not helpless in with those options. So, some businesses will say that's beneficial for us to have people have those flexible working arrangements, but your hands aren't tied in relation to that under the current structures. But it seems to be something that seems to be on the headlines a little bit more. I haven't developed any strong theories on it, but can rest assured that employers, if that's not the path you want to go down, currently there are alternatives.
Yeah, fantastic. So, look, as we sort of come to a close on this, what are the key pointers? So, the small business owner is about to go through a world of pain. I think with the economy tightening, the market's slowing, people are threatened by these increases in interest rates. Inflation is at an all-time high. What advice would you be giving people in small business right now?
Um, One, your employees can be your greatest asset. So make sure if you've got good employees that you look after them. Continually trying to improve your employees. You're not always going to have A graders, but if you can get those C graders up to B grade and D graders up to C grade, um, and that's by being very clear and transparent. getting your staff to buy into what you're trying to achieve, I think, is very important, and setting clear guidelines on what the expectations are and what their entitlements are. Two-way street. Yeah, sure, I'm here and I'm running a business and I'm here to be successful, this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, employment is a sizable chunk of your time. You know, you're spending 40 hours a week there or more. We want you to be invested in what we're trying to achieve, and also have a clear pathway. You know, if you perform and achieve this for me, there might be a promotion here, or there might be a pay rise here, or if you achieve this target, I'm going to do some form of profit sharing. But having a two-way street, I see so many times that it's where things aren't defined, where employees take liberties. And I've also seen the other side of the coin. Not employers aren't perfect either. I've seen employers where they've underpaid staff. I've seen employers where they haven't provided a fair or safe workplace. So it's about combining those two elements and making sure that there's a achievable outcome for not just the owner from a commercial perspective, but a pathway for your employees.
Yeah. So really, I suppose it sort of concurs with what I believe too, which is the owner's job is to make sure that the team are on board.
Yep.
The idea is not to make it an us and them. So employees with entitlement mentalities need to be re-educated. Or
Yep.
Depending on the nature of the work, though, sometimes we can manage our people within the set framework. But I think more and more, as you said, people are getting smarter about it, and really, it's an employee's market, isn't it? The employee gets to choose where they work these days. So the employer's job is to make sure that they've got their conditions clear, they've got career path clear, they know how to identify their good players and they look after those ones, and they know how to take their non-performing players and either manage them into performance or recognise that it's not a good fit.
Yep, spot on, and that I think you've summed it up beautifully there, David. That's exactly a really good synopsis on where we're at in the current environment.
So in terms of resources, because obviously Employee Sure has been established for quite some time now, is there any sort of resources that people can grab online if they need to find out a bit more about how you guys can help, or how to navigate?
Well, basically, my details, obviously, I'll get you to that you've got there available. We have there's plenty of information online, but we do have, obviously you and I have had a relationship for quite some time. We have a referral program in place, which means that if you were, if any of the listeners or viewers that are on today are interested in our services, I'm more than happy to provide complimentary advice, and if they've got any pressing issues. But if they contact me directly, basically they get a 10% discount off our standard pricing. We've got 31,000 clients, I think I mentioned before, across ANZ. We spend millions a year on Google AdWords. If they simply ring our 1300 number, that's another dedicated channel, so that does not attract that discounted pricing. So I'd encourage them, if anyone's got any queries, to contact me directly at Employers. So, and that's Marty Fincher. I'm sure you've got those. You've got my.
We'll add a link into the chat after the program,
sure.
And also names on the screen. So if anyone wants to find you, I'm pretty sure that if they Google you, they'll find.
Exactly.
Nothing scary.
Exactly. So anyone, if they've got any queries about, or any technical queries, I'm more than happy to provide you with free advice. And if you are interested in exploring our services, more than happy to give you a quote on what that looks like as well. But I can guarantee you it's more than affordable. I've got clients that have got one employee. I've got clients that have got 400 employees. So we've got different options depending on the size of your business.
Fantastic. Marty, look, thanks so much for joining us on the call today. Really appreciate some insight from you. Been in this game for a bit, and just great to hear what your thoughts were.
Thanks for your time, David, and I'll speak to you next time.
All right, cheers.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.